Yesterday, the head of China, Xi Jinping, announced that the 53 countries in Africa will henceforth be able to export anything and everything to China, zero tariff. This happens in the same week that the United States reminds everyone that we have put 30, 40, and 50% tariffs against a whole host of African countries. This is grotesque. I did a little research and I discovered China has been doing more business with Africa than the United States for the last 15 years. Isn't this something that needs a different approach than what we are doing? We are taking an entire continent and helping it move in a direction we say, politically and ideologically, we are opposed to or different from. This is a sign that we are in an economic and political system that is in very bad shape. I'm an economist. The idea that the president could single-handedly impose tariffs on the whole world without any action by any other official is stupefying. What kind of a crazy idea is this? Along comes an unusual president, and you see what we are now seeing. The United States is becoming, as many polls already showing. If you ask people around the world, what's the scariest country in the world? They name us. We're the ones that are doing odd, strange, irrational things. They don't understand. There was once an alliance between the United States and Western Europe. That seems to be disappearing also. All the major politicians of Europe over the last 75 years have made their careers by being pro-American. If you are understood not to be pro-American as the next one, your career suffered. More or less, it suffered. So Europe is led by people, all of whom are super vetted to be pro-American. Mr. Starmer in England, Mr. Macron in France, Mr. Merz in Germany, and you could go on. But they remind me now of the cartoon that Anthony and I both saw as young people. There's this character running off the edge of the cliff, and he's now several feet beyond the edge of the cliff, looks down and realizes that the cliff isn't there anymore. He's run off the edge, and as he realizes, looking down, that there's no cliff, he falls and the story is over. The Europeans are the clown. They're running off the end of the cliff. They're looking down. Mr. Trump has gone somewhere else, and they're left to fight a war they cannot win and impose on their people a level of denial of social programs, which Europeans, having enjoyed much better ones than we have here for decades, are not about to give up. You're looking at the United States with a shrinking number of allies as its adversary grows. And here's a statistic that ought to be inscribed in every economics curriculum. If you add up the GDP of the group of seven, the United States, Japan, Canada, Britain, France, Italy, and Germany, the big old Western economic powerhouse, it comes to about 28-29% of total global output. If you do the same calculation, you add up the GDP of China and its BRICS allies, it's 35% of world output. The dominant bloc in the world economy is not the West. It is not the United States. Every country in Asia, Africa, Latin America with a project they would like help on, or export markets they'd like to be expanded, etc., etc. They still send missions to Moscow, to London, and to New York and all of that. But as soon as the mission is done there, they go to New Delhi, or they go to, China, they go to Sao Paulo, and they can get a better deal there, and they're making those deals. And the Americans keep thinking that's evil act. It's not evil action. It's the logic of an economic development that the United States either unwilling or unable to deal with. I agree with Anthony. I think the potential of this country is enormous, has been, is still. But I am watching all of that eroding, disappearing, and I would love to, I don't want to dictate your topic, obviously, But this spectacle of deporting large numbers of people who've been working here for years and paying their taxes, and what are we doing? The country became great because it could absorb immigrants. It could find ways to give them a decent home, a decent job, income, and then get their contribution to the production. When we deport, we show we're an economy that can't do that anymore. That's what we show. The rest is advertising, and that is not serious. For the United States at this point in its history to attack literally every government in the world, every economy in the world, by suddenly announcing, not by discussions, not by meetings, not by conferences, that their problems and American problems might both be better solved if they rethought their relationship. No. Instead, you are going to be taxed. A tariff is the name of a tax. You are going to have every one of your products, goods and services shipped to the United States be suddenly confronted by having to charge a higher price in the United States because whoever buys the goods has to pay a tax to Uncle Sam called a tariff. You cannot do this in the United States if you're honest, especially if you're a Republican, because if the Republican Party stands for anything in America, it stands for no taxes, lower taxes, fewer taxes, and Mr. Trump is raising taxes on Americans when he imposes a tariff. So you cannot be honest. You cannot say anything about it that's true. You have to make make-believe. And one example, very quick, is the make-believe by a tariff, you're going to change the location decision of significant numbers of businesses. That's not going to happen. And for reasons that every business school that I know of, and I've taught in several of them, would teach the students. You don't know whether a tariff is going to be long-lasting or short-lasting. Mr. Trump has made it underscoringly clear that whatever a tariff is, you don't know if it's going to be there next week, let alone next year. What company is going to spend a fortune of money moving production, rechanging supply chains, and all of the rest of it on something as flimsy as one temporary government's decision, maybe to have the tariffs change, maybe not, maybe more, maybe less. Not going to happen. And he has to tell that to the people, but he doesn't, because in America, it's about what you advertise your product does, not what it actually is. In my judgment, Mr. Musk rescued Mr. Trump, got in the election by giving him $200 to $300 million, which at least is the sum I see more often than any other sum that he did. And that, of course, is an extraordinary gift. Very, very few people could or would do such a thing. So he establishes himself immediately as the number one patron of the political life. I agree with Anthony. The two parties are constantly pandering to the same small group of super rich people for these kinds of donations. That's exactly true. And Mr. Musk, being the richest one of them, is in a remarkable position to play around in politics to whatever extent he finds it amusing. I think this is disgusting. I think it makes a joke, and not a good one, about democracy. Every time I hear a leader in our country talk about preserving democracy, I keep wondering, what exactly are you talking about? You yourself are a creature of the absence of that kind of democracy. So I don't have much hope. If Mr. Musk funds a party, I'm assuming it'll be a party that's even more his spokesman than Trump was able or willing to be. And I don't see that as solving any problem. There's nothing that Mr. Musk has ever said that suggests to me that he understands the problem. Even when he talks about the need to deal with the growing national debt, the deficit problem, which in my judgment is a serious problem. And I think, a few weeks ago, the Japanese, by their unwillingness to buy the bonds, were letting people know just how far and wide and deep the anxiety is about endless frivolously funding this American bottomless pit of national debt. And I'm acutely aware of how that has financed our import surplus. It has financed our economy. And, I think Anthony said it a little bit earlier. We don't fight wars since Vietnam. We don't fight wars with taxing our people because they wouldn't support it. You have to do it by borrowing to have the illusion that somehow you're fighting the war without it costing people, which of course it does. It's just you spread it out. And now we can't do it anymore. Our national debt, the interest on it this year is very close to the defense budget and will be larger than the defense budget within a year or two if the big beautiful bill goes through. At some point, as everybody who's ever studied this material knows, the mass of people will get it into their heads, hopefully we'll help them, that you're not being given the schooling or the health care or the rest that you want because the government is taking our taxes and giving it to the rich people who lent to the government. That's not a sustainable political arrangement. Governments go when they're in that position. Anyway, my hope is that this stuff becomes more and more glaringly apparent, and that Mr. Trump, Mr. Musk, or anybody else who enters the scene will be pressured by the flow of events to stop the advertising, play acting, and start dealing one way or another with the actual. Meanwhile, my job is to explain as much as I can to whoever I can get to listen what's going on here, because frankly, I don't know what else to do. Although if there's more horror shows like the one in Los Angeles, then you'll find me on the street also. I can assure you that if there's any conclusion I've spent a lifetime arriving at, I didn't start with this, it's the conclusion that the problems of the American economy are much deeper than what I was taught to look at. And it took me a long time to figure it out, and here's what I would say very simply. We have to deal with a question that we have been afraid, and that's what the word I use advisedly, afraid to ask. We have a particular system, a way of organizing enterprise, factory, office, store, doesn't matter. And that's with a relatively small number of people at the top, the owner, the inventor, the partners who started it, or if you're a corporation, the board of directors at the top. They make all the crucial economic decisions, what to produce, what technology to use, where to carry out the production, and what to do with the net revenue that this enterprise generates. The vast majority of the people at every workplace are employees, and they are systematically excluded from making those decisions. If the people making them are accountable, they're accountable to the shareholders, who are not the people working there. That's a completely different group. This dichotomy creates a level of tension, difference, conflict, and bitterness, and envy, and a whole lot of other things. That set of problems is the root cause of the difficulties. And the way out is to have an honest discussion. That's all people like me ask for. An honest discussion. Is this received traditional way of organizing an enterprise the best way? A necessary way? Something every enterprise has to demonstrate? Or might there be, and I'm going to use these words provocatively on purpose, might there be an argument for a democratization of the enterprise? We make the political authorities accountable to us at least as voters, but we make the authorities in the business world unaccountable to those over whom their decisions exert enormous influence, namely the employees. Why are the employees not given the same democratic position in their enterprise that they get in the community where they reside, vis-a-vis the mayor or the senator or the president for that matter? I think we can be proud as Americans. We question our education system. We question our medical system. We question the institution of marriage. We're extraordinary in the questions we dare to ask. But when it comes to economics, we are not exemplary in what we dare to ask. We are like sheep with a taboo, and you never go there, and you simply assume that what we got is what is necessary and also the best thing since sliced bread. And we built a campaign that succeeded in getting those two reformed, including even as amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The people he knows are against all of this, just like I do. They are going to fight us every step of the way to prevent those reforms. We know that because they've been doing that already. And they're not going to stop just because we win They're going to go to work to undo what it is we will have achieved if we get it. Look, when my students ask me to say, what is your overview to the last 75 years of American economic history? Here's my answer. American economic history in the last 75 years has been a concerted, largely successful effort to undo the New Deal. That's what we have. Because at the end of the New Deal, the business the GOP, the business community, they got together and they had seen in the 1930s something they never wanted to see again. A president who did exactly what Anthony said, who responded to the people in the middle and the bottom by creating Social Security, unemployment compensation, the first minimum wage, and the first government jobs program for 15 million unemployed people, and transformed the economy by doing it. And who paid for it? The rich. Tax rates went way, way up, and what they didn't get from the rich in taxes, they got from them by borrowing. But the important thing was they used it for the mass of people, for all of that education and infrastructure and all the things that Anthony rightly put out. Those people will undo what we do unless those people are not in the position to have and to use the profits of enterprise. And to take that away from them requires the democratization of the enterprise that I'm talking about. Let's take this interesting idea, the free market. You often hear that because it's a way of saying markets work and do their wonderful things and give us prosperity and growth and all of that other stuff, but you can't interfere in them. They do it beautifully. They do it perfectly. They do it, as the economists tell us, optimally. But you cannot interfere. You must not interfere. If you turn and pay attention to conservative writers, they will tell you how some law is inappropriate because it interferes in the market, or some rule or regulation is inappropriate because it is contrary to how the market would do something. Conservatives, for example, always hated, blocked, avoided, delayed, undercut the minimum wage because they want the market to decide how low you can get away with paying a worker, not some government make a rule, a minimum. The uncritical, strange celebration of the market as if it were some spectacular institution beyond all others, the ultimate fruit of American or global or human ingenuity, depending on how narrow or broad your vision is. This really is a problem. It is getting in the way of a rational discussion and a debate about how we face the real problems we have and come up with solutions worth trying to solve these problems rather than excuse them away. I want to make the case that celebrating the market is a terrible mistake, and it's costly. Well, we begin with private enterprise. The idea that a business that produces shoes, software programs, ice cream cones, it doesn't matter, that businesses that make the goods and services we all want, we all rely on, should be organized as private enterprises. Groups of people get together and make the ice cream or the shoes or the software programs, and we all know what the system is like. They do it to make money. They spend money and time and energy, and they hope to make more money coming back than they put in to make the business go. In fact, that's what drives the system. Private, profit-seeking enterprise. And the enterprises interact in a market with one another and with all of us. They interact with us because we buy what they produce. They interact with us because they hire us to produce what they sell us later. We are the buyers, we are the producers. They are the middlemen and women, the entrepreneurs. Yes, and they love markets. Why? Well, because the market is an institution for them. Here comes your first clue. It's for them. They like it. They want it. They don't want to be constrained. Listen to them. If you have an entrepreneur or a businessman or woman or someone who believes all of this stuff, listen to them. Next time over coffee or a beer or at lunch, listen to them. Here's how they look at the world. We do this important service. We make shoes or ice cream or software or whatever it is, and the government comes and takes our money. We don't want that. Or the government comes and tells us what we can and cannot do. We know best how to make the shoes. We know best how to make the ice cream. We don't want regulations. We don't want taxes. We don't want anyone to intrude. We want to decide who we hire and keep them if they do the work we want and fire them if they don't. We don't want to have to pay them a minimum wage. We pay them what it's worth having them there. We want the system to work to give us the best chance we can have to get a profit. That's why we're in business. But here's the interesting thing I want you to think about. There never has been a free market anywhere. Ever. You know what free markets are? They are utopias. They are vague ideas in the minds of a few economic writers over the years and others who didn't understand it all that well, who actually thought you could have that. Well, you never have. Governments have always shaped markets. Always. One way or another. Openly, secretly, both. Usually. And likewise, institutions have arisen that don't allow the market to work. Think of a Thanksgiving dinner. It's an institution in our society. A whole lot of people get together, maybe at your house, and have some turkey and mashed potatoes. Now, if you wanted to organize that with a free market, then mom might make the turkey and sell a drumstick to you, because that would be a market distribution of the cooked turkey. But she doesn't. And when Papa at the end of the meal asks you, please, could you take out the garbage that we've, gathered here from the turkey bones and all the rest. And you said, sure, Papa, that's a service. It'll cost you $4. Your Papa would lean across the table and either say something or maybe punctuate it with a slap. And they give you an interesting speech. That's horrible that you ask money because we're a family, you would be told. We love each other. We care for each other. We don't charge each other money. That's for outside the house, not inside. Inside, it's love that counts. Wow. You know what that means? That means your parents think that love and markets are opposites. And here's a thought for you. If the market undermines love inside the house, maybe it does that outside too. Governments have always come in. You know why? Because markets do things that people can't stand. I already gave you one example in the first half of today's show. Let's suppose there's a real shortage of anything important. Food, clothing, shelter. Well, we have that in America today. We have a real shortage of shelter. That's why rents and houses are so expensive. You know what happens if there's a shortage of housing? It goes to the richest people. You know why? Because that's how markets work. If two people want one apartment, they bid for it. And the richer one keeps raising what he or she can offer until the poorer one drops out because they can't afford it. And who gets the apartment? The richer one. Do you really believe, anyone watching or listening, that the best way a society can distribute whatever is scarce is by means of a market? You don't believe that. You never did. So why are you celebrating markets? And when someone comes back and says to you, hey, when the price goes up with the rich people paying for it, that will bring lots of other businesses in to produce more of that high-priced thing because it's profitable. See, isn't the market getting the result you want? My answer to that is, what are you, stupid? You think the capitalists, the businessmen and women haven't figured that out? They know that if they can block others from coming in, they can enjoy the high price they get from making what they sell scarce. They've learned that lesson long time ago. They keep restricting the availability to jack the price up. Eggs aren't the price they are these days because of the bird flu. That's this part of the story. The rest of the story is scarcity of eggs allows you to charge $15 a dozen instead of $5. And they know it and they're profiting. If you wonder why, take a look. Bacon has gone up an awful lot too. And bird flu doesn't affect bacon. does it. The capitalists have long ago understood that they need to manipulate the market in order to get the prices they want. The free market is a phantom. The whole industry of advertising is there to manipulate the market. You pay an advertiser to give people the idea to buy what you sell, to push it, to tell you you're not just buying a bar of soap, you're buying something that will transform your sex life. You giggle, you know it's not true. But it works, doesn't it? That's why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Take the market as an institution. Nobody does that except in the classroom or the politician on the 4th of July who gives a speech. You know why we have a minimum wage? Because people were dying after working 40 hours a week. They were paid so little. You know why we have a Food and Drug Administration? Because we were buying bad meat and taking dangerous drugs. They were profitable, and that's why they were being produced. But they weren't good for us. Profits are not a one-way street to good things. You can make a profit by cheating people. You can make a profit by using inferior materials. You can make a profit, but you know the answer to this. And you know how you prevent that, or at least try to? You bring the government in to regulate. Mr. Trump is busy deregulating. And you know what that means? Pretty soon, we're going to have all those things happening which got us regulated in the first place, and we will go and do it all again. But you know, meanwhile, lots of people will be hurt. Lots of mistakes will be made. There's nothing magical about a market. The reason the businesses have mostly celebrated the market is they're scared of the government. And they're only scared of it because the government isn't 100% under their control. In the end, we vote. And the majority of us are the majority of the voters. And we could decide all kinds of things they don't want. So they got to badmouth the government. They've got to get people to not trust the government. They've got to celebrate the free market as if it could do all the things it can't do. They want you to be what they need you to think, so you don't interfere in the profits they're trying so hard to make. That's what this idolatry of the market is for. The fact that the employers like it ought to make the rest of us a little nervous, because there's lots of things employers like that we know are not good for us. They would like us to work longer. They would like us to work harder. They would like it to pay us less. They would like to get our lunch breaks shorter. They'd like you're aware of all of that because you've lived it. You know. So why assume that the market they like is the best thing for you? Stop. Ask a simple question. What's in it for them? What's in it for us? I think I know what's in it for them. A market is really an institution where the people who are the richest are the best off. Think about a market very simply as a child might. If a rich person and a poor person are standing in front of the ice cream vendor and they both want an ice cream, and the vendor explains, I only got one, what happens? The one with more money offers more, and eventually the vendor sells the ice cream to the one, because the one with more bids more and more until the one without money has no money to pay that high price. Rich people love markets because it favors them. When there's a scarcity of anything, the rich people get it. When poor people haven't got enough money to buy milk for their kids, rich people have the money to buy the milk for their cats. That's what markets do. They distribute, they allocate, but they allocate in a very particular way. To the richest go whatever is scarce. And you know what the people at the top who own and operate businesses are? They're the rich people. That's how you get rich in our culture. You either have a business or you inherit a business. That's how it works. Wealth is made in this system by and for enterprises, but not for everybody. Who gets the wealth from the Chase Manhattan Bank? Jamie Dimon. He gets millions a year. Not the bank clerk, not the people people who sweep up in the bank, not the person who explains your mortgage to you. No, the ones at the top, they get the big bucks. You know that. Markets are for them. They are not for you. The very Republicans in power now, the very Elon Musk, who I recently pointed out, and I think, wants to privatize, free enterprise eyes, Amtrak and the post office. They want the market. And yet, what is a tariff? Mr. Trump is the champion of tariffs. Tariffs is a government intervention in the market. It says we're not going to let the buyers and sellers negotiate the prices of goods coming in and out of the United States. We're going to hit them with a tax. Wow. I'm going to subsidize this industry. I'm going to punish these people. I'm going to invade over there. I'm going to snatch back the Panama Canal. Wow. These are all government interventions. They're not free market. Mr. Trump didn't go to the Panamanians and say, I'd like to buy back the canal. Let's negotiate what price it. No. I'm going to send the army if you don't do what I tell you. That's the government. The very people who want you to believe other than they act. Do what I say. Don't do like I do. Don't be fooled. The market is an imperfect institution. It has its uses. We could try to experiment with it, but it would always have to be hedged around with rules, regulations, limits, and all the rest, because otherwise it produces grotesque inequality, unjust outcomes, one of which is to impose market ideology as an attempt to bamboozle people into allowing the owners and operators of enterprises, the 3%, to rule the roost as they have in the past and as they want to continue to do now. Our problems are right here at home in our economic system. We don't need it, we shouldn't want it, and we can do better. As you know from this program, just think with me what it might be like if we democratized our enterprises. Yeah, took the daring step to say we're going to have democracy at the workplace. Everybody who works at the factory or the office or the store, together, one person, one vote, decides what we produce, how we do it, what technology we use, where we do it, and what we do with the proceeds of what we make.